I woke up to the sound of hooves. Not on the road, not somewhere down the valley, right on my pasture. And when I walked out there, the woman grinning by the fence was the HOA president. Imagine that the person who's supposed to manage rules standing in sunglasses like she's the queen of everything, while a dozen cows trample the one piece of ground I've kept alive through 4 dry summers. I dropped my coffee on the step and didn't even notice until it hit the wood. I'm telling you, there's a moment of beat when something small turns into a line you won't cross. For me, it was seeing those cows tearing through the alfalfa I'd planted that spring, the shoots ripped up like someone had taken a lawnmower to my pride. The hooves made wet, heavy sounds, the earth thudded, and there, leaning against my fence with that smug half-smile, was Karen, pink jacket, oversized sunglasses, arms folded like she was posing for a portrait titled Authority. Morning, she called like we weren't in the middle of a war zone. Hope you don't mind. The HOA agreed. This pasture wasn't being put to good use, so I let my cattle roam here for a while. Better than wasting good grass. You ever been told your house is being better used by someone else? It makes your blood go cold in a way that's almost funny if you like dark humor. I clenched my jaw and I told her straight and flat, "This is my land. You can't just turn my pasture into a buffet." She tilted her head like I'd said something charming and pointed at some dusty stack of HOA papers she'd been clutching since someone printed them in 1997. "Bring it up at the next board meeting," she said. "Until then, it's community space." Community space. The words landed like a slap. I walked into that pasture waving my arms, clapping, making a fool of myself, trying to herd cattle like they were lost kids. They moved slow and stubborn, more interested in my plants than my yelling. Karen watched, leaning on the fence, enjoying every second. That was the first time I realized this wasn't confusion or a mistake. It was a practice, a pressure play. She'd been doing this to people for years. There were stories, neighbors repainting barns until the color met her approval, someone nearly losing a porch because it offended the aesthetic. Most folks folded. They didn't stand and fight a bully wearing a title like armor. I'm a rancher. I wake up before dawn and I know my land like the lines on my palms. I went to the county records that afternoon, pulled my deed, measured every boundary until the clerk said, "Yep, it's yours." No shared grazing clause, no fine print giving a president the right to redistribute pastures. I left holding a certified copy like a shield and a promise. Back on the ranch that evening, as the sun painted the fields gold, I stood by the fence and watched her herd, and I thought about the wolves. Now, before your head starts spinning, let me say this. Plain, I don't keep dangerous animals loose. I run a licensed conservation enclosure, a sanctuary out near the woods. I raise those wolves from pups as part of a program. They're trained, they're contained, and they trust me the way a dog trusts a person who's been awake with it at 3 a.m. That trust matters. The plan that formed in my head wasn't wild. It was strategic. I documented everything, photos of the cattle trampling my alfalfa, close-ups of the broken fence posts where someone had forced away, in videos of Karen standing there like she'd bought the place. I emailed the HOA board, called them, and mostly got voicemail or excuses. A couple told me with the kind of bureaucratic flatness that's its own weapon that Karen had discretion over unused spaces. That was the word she wanted, discretion. It sounded like permission to bend rules. She kept pushing. I fixed the fence, she came back and loosened a wire. I found feed tossed into my pasture at midnight on my security footage. That's when the line between petty neighbor and criminal trespass started to blur. I called a lawyer, Mike Local, low-key, someone who'd taken on HOA nonsense before. He listened, chuckled, then said, "This one stepped over the line. Don't be surprised they love when people don't know their rights." And here's the twist, which in a good story is supposed to change how you see everything. For weeks, I'd thought I was alone in this. Turns out I wasn't. On my side quietly were a few neighbors who'd felt Karen's grip for years. Bill down the road, old rancher, salt and pepper beard, a face that's seen weather and won't be bullied. He came forward at the HOA meeting and told the room what I'd already proved: my wolves are part of a licensed sanctuary, my deed is clear, and my cameras had caught Karen herself luring cattle over at night. The board sat like a jury. Karen's smile, that confident armor, started to chip. But let me not get ahead of myself. There's a night I'll never forget. Midnight full moon, perfect for a bad movie, not for trespassing. I heard the gate creak and the low mooing of cattle being herded. Karen thought darkness would hide her. She thought the night was on her side. I pulled on boots, grabbed a flashlight, and walked out, and when she looked up, I called one sharp whistle. From the tree line came a single long howl. It sent a chill through the valley like something from a bone-deep place. The wolves stepped to the edge of their enclosure, eyes glowing silhouettes in silver moonlight. They weren't charging. They didn't have to. The herd panicked and ran, not because I'd ordered attack, but because presence matters. Instinct is real. Karen screamed at me, called me mad, threatened lawsuits, animal control. I held up my phone and said, "I've got cameras. You trespassed. You broke my fence." She tried to spin it, tried the old tactic, make the bully the victim. It almost worked in the small minds of people who haven't seen the receipts. We went to that HOA meeting. She stood at the front like a preacher. "He used wolves to threaten my livestock," she said, dramatic and loud. I walked in with a folder, permits from the State Wildlife Department, county records, timestamps from my cameras, photos of hoof prints, the broken posts. I asked calmly, "Would you like me to play the footage of you tossing feed into my field at midnight?" Her face went pale. For a second, the room really quieted. Martha, the vice president, raised her hand and said, "We'll review the footage." That was the crack. Folks began to whisper. Bill spoke up and reminded the room the wolves are part of a sanctioned program. The tide shifted. When you bring facts to a party of opinions, facts tend to be a poor guest until they're presented clearly with timestamps and witnesses. We piled up the evidence, and Mike, my lawyer, did the rest. Court wasn't a circus. It was a clearing. Karen's lawyer talked about emotional distress and danger. Mike showed video after video of trespassing, feed being thrown, fence being broken. The judge, a no-nonsense man who'd seen more than his share of petty warfare, looked at the proof and said, "Property lines are not suggestions." He ruled in my favor. Karen had to pay for damages, legal fees, and the HOA was told to review its policies. The relief that came over me in that courtroom was slow and deep, like breath after being underwater. Outside, neighbors clapped me on the back. "About time," Bill said with that grin that says both congratulations and "you did the right thing." And then the satisfying part, the karma. The board voted Karen out. 2 days later, I got a short note from her. "I will no longer interfere with your property. Consider this matter closed." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a proper signature. But it was surrender. And sometimes surrender looks exactly like a small crooked scribble at the bottom of a page. Rebuilding the pasture took time. The grass grows slow when it's been stomped. I repaired fences, replanted patches, and sat with the wolves in the evenings feeding them scraps from my own steaks. Luna, she's the alpha silvercoat, would press her head against my hand and look at me like she knew we'd done something right. I started to notice neighbors bringing pies, stopping by just to say thanks, or to tell a story about something Karen had done to them years ago. Turns out standing up for yourself has a way of shifting a neighborhood's mood. People remember they have a voice. If there's a moral here, I'll tell it: soft power that depends on fear collapses when someone refuses to be afraid. Karen's power was mostly the space she took up her voice at meetings, her willingness to twist rules. She didn't expect resistance. She didn't expect a rancher who knew his deeds, kept receipts, and had a few allies. But there's another thing I learned, and this one's smaller but sharper. Standing your ground isn't always about being loud. It's about being steady, methodical, documenting, calling the clerk, taking the time to be right. Sometimes the best defense is paperwork, cameras, and the patience to wait for truth to come into the light. Now I'll leave you with this because I want to hear you when someone in authority starts pressing on your boundaries. Do you stay quiet to avoid conflict? Or do you take the risk, gather the facts, and push back? Is it better to keep peace at the cost of your own land and pride, or to risk a fight that might make things worse before they get better? Tell me what you think and tell me your own stories. Did you stand up or did you wish you had? I want to hear where you draw that line.